A second, leading off, though, adding more insult to injury for the jobless in America. The Senate failing once again to extend emergency benefits for people unemployed 6 months or longer. Democrats working to strip some of the spending, but that still was not enough to overcome a GOP filibuster. The Republicans arguing it would add $30 billion to the deficit. Of course, a few trillion to bankers is no problem. A frustrated Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid said he gave Republicans every opportunity to say yes. The bipartisan bickering resulting in yet another blow to more than 1 million out-of-work Americans who haven't gotten any checks since the government ran out of money more than 3 weeks ago. But never mind, the bank stocks were up today after scoring a huge victory last night in Congress. Here to mix it up in our panel, senior advisor for the New Democrat Network, Alicia Menendez, and conservative blogger, Liz Mair. Nice to see it's not a football game. It's nice to see you two. Liz, I will start with you. We'll talk jobs. Is it fair to separate all these things, and is that how we get ourselves into trouble? In other words, you look at unemployment away from the deficit, you look at the deficit away from the bank bailouts, you look at the bank bailouts away from a culture of corrupt regulation. Isn't this all connected?
Yeah, I think it is connected, and certainly I think that that's the sort of objection that you're seeing Republicans raising to the way that Democrats are moving things like this jobs bill. You're finding that there are too many things that are being lumped together. It is jacking up the costs, it is adding to the deficit, and it is something that makes Republicans and, frankly, most Americans extremely uneasy with what is going on in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, Alicia, are you surprised that the Republican Party it doesn't come with better proposals? It's clear that the Democrats' proposals are mediocre, but it's also clear that the opposition party, instead of calling them out for the mediocrity of their proposals, just says we don't want to do anything. How do we get ourselves to meet with our choices, mediocrity or nothing?
It's a pretty sad state of affairs. I agree with you. And so, I think what we're seeing here is you have the same party, Republicans, who when they were in power, you had declining wages, you had spending explode, and now they want to talk about austerity. So I think the American people are tired of this endless filibustering, the endless obstructionism, and they want to see Republicans come to the table, actually work with Democrats to take some of these proposals, turn them into realities. The irony here is they're just going to shift the burden to the states. States are going to have to either have massive layoffs, cuts, or tax increases themselves. So someone's going to have to solve this problem.
For my money, calling out the Democrats is like shooting fish in a barrel. The thing is so ridiculous, and yet the Republicans don't even seem to have an ability to do that. Next, some U.S. troops in Afghanistan out in an interview today saying that they believe that it may be good that McChrystal is gone, that in fact that they felt McChrystal was too aggressive with the deployment and was putting too many of their lives at risk. Of course, all this anecdotal reporting, so I imagine you could find a lot of different troops, Alicia, to tell a lot of different stories, but at the end of the day, the conversation about how the war in Afghanistan is going, and the reporting here suggests not that well, seems it's only going to become bigger, not smaller.
Right. And that's why when I talk to my friends in the intelligence community, their meme seems to be that the real story here is not about McChrystal's departure, but about Petraeus's entrance, and the fact that what he was able to do in Iraq, he will hopefully be able to do in Afghanistan, and that is simply to shift the goalposts, to manage expectations, and to take a serious look at our strategies.
What is the most important thing you think for everybody to really have an eye on with this story, Liz?
I think my takeaway on this is that the troops are obviously pretty happy that General Petraeus has taken charge. I think he's tremendously respected within the military, and I think that that's something that potentially could give a real boost to the mission in Afghanistan. I think that's something that, frankly, everybody would be happy to hear at this point, because it is a fight, and it also is one that most Americans believe we really do need to make an effort to win.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, what would we win in Afghanistan at this point, just out of curiosity? What do you mean when you say
ideally,
win?
Well, win, of course, that is dependent on how a wide variety of people actually define that. I think winning from my standpoint would be ideally ending up with a relatively stable country that is not host to a bunch of terrorists that intend to continue attacking the United States and launching attacks from within Afghanistan territory.
No, that sounds totally awesome. Now, what about the fact that those terrorists actually have left, moved to Pakistan, and are trying to kill us from there, and we're busy deploying a bunch of military resources into a country where those people aren't, because we're driven by a bunch of scaredy cats who actually can't make an intelligent decision?
You know, I think what's going on in Pakistan is clearly a concern also, but at the end of the day, what I think we don't want to have, especially considering how much you see population movements between the two countries, what you don't want to have is a situation where Afghanistan becomes a kind of hotbed where people can constantly cross back and forth over that border and frankly use that as a base in the same way that parts of Pakistan are currently being used as a base. It probably entails a more comprehensive strategy, you know, than what we were looking at, say, 4, 5, 6 years ago, but at the end of the day, I think Petraeus is somebody who is well respected, is being able to implement that and drive progress forward, and that's something that I think everybody should be glad about, frankly.
Yeah. Listen, a pleasure to talk to both of you. If you ask me, I would leave Afghanistan today because I cannot imagine what we would possibly accomplish by conducting more war in that country. But again, that's my point of view. Thank you, guys. Much more ahead today, from fighting transparency tooth and nail to cutting backroom deals that benefit the big banks and his coffers. We've got a lot of dirty politics to cover in Busted today, because last night was a real doozy when it comes to screwing the American people in Washington, D.C. But first, life is not rough for these particular pooches. Pampered Pets. It's our By the Numbers today. Would you do this?